I mean, since we're touching on sort of education and stuff, and fascinating the way you use the analogy of the glider. It's a fascinating way of looking at it. What do you think? Do you have any opinions at all about, there are loads of kids who go to do photographic courses in universities and colleges, etc. Do you think that's wise, or would they learn more from photography if they came and worked with you for 6 months?
I don't think they'd learn anything from me. I think, I personally, I wish I'd learnt photography when I was 18, 19, because then I'd have been doing it for like 30 years instead of just like 15 years. So I'd have been able to. I wish I'd started earlier. Okay. But then again, if I had started earlier, I wouldn't have had all that experience of painting. So maybe. I think it's really important when people learn things, not necessarily just photography, but any of the arts, that they start at a certain base level. Yes. And make their own discoveries. And I think it can be quite easy for students to learn an awful lot in their doing degrees or whatever, and make loads of contacts, and have the big advantage, I think, is to have all that social contact with everybody, and know people, and get to know galleries, and get to know the system and whatnot. The main problem is that they do end up producing work maybe that looks very similar to each other. I'm sure loads of people have said that. And it's the breaking away and becoming the individual is such a hard thing to be able to do.
Yes. Do you think following the zeitgeist? I mean, I've noticed that with lots of people who show their work, etc., is that there's this particular sort of modern way of looking at the world, but everything seems very homogenized, and they all seem to be looking at the world in exactly the same way, because they think that's the attractive way, that's the way of doing things.
Yeah, and it should be. If they see something that's everyone else is doing, they should go and do something in a complete opposite. That's what I would do.
Yes.
If I saw everyone was doing if suddenly everyone started doing Poppit Sands pictures or Charles landscape pictures, I would instantly stop doing it, and I would want to find something that's new. That's always been quite an important thing for me, and I think it should be. You find that painters do it quite a lot.
Yes.
They look for their sort of unique voice, but then once again, there's still so many copyist painters as well.
Yeah.
I think people underestimate how difficult it is to branch away from what is expected maybe of them, what is expected of the lecturers, and to be brave enough to do something that's not just different, because you can go and do something different any time of the day. I could spray one of my pictures with mayonnaise, and I could class it as being different, but it has to be different and good. That's the thing.
Yes.
And so being different and rubbish is not.
Where do you draw? I mean, you do a lot of thinking. I know you obviously you do a lot of thinking about your work, and how it's that's become obvious in the way the stuff you show as well, because you can see a progression, and you can see there's a lot of thought gone into what you do. Where do you draw inspiration from? Is it just from your own head and from your own gut feeling and your own heart?
Yeah, you're right yourself, I think.
Okay.
I would have said the beach before. I would have said I get all my inspiration from the beach, but it's not the beach. I get the inspiration from ideas I've got from the beach, and so it's not. I'm not getting inspiration from the outside world. I'm getting inspiration from how I've reacted from the outside world. And it's strange. Inspiration's a bit of an unusual word for me.
So have artists influenced you, or have other photographers influenced you?
Not so much. Okay. Not so much. Not photographers or painters. I find as I'm discovering new things and sort of hopefully developing and growing, I'm finding that suddenly painters that I never used to like at all and couldn't understand, suddenly I can see their work and it makes a real impact on me, as if I've through paying my dues and learning and thinking, I've suddenly got to a point where I can actually start to understand what they're on about now. And there's a painter, Graham Sutherland, who is famous around these parts. And I never used to like his work, and I found it very dour and dull, and it looked like dishwater to me, and I couldn't understand why anybody would like it. And then I found that something's grown inside me, and I begin to appreciate what he was talking about. And it's almost as though he had his own language that I've now slowly beginning to understand what he was saying. It's quite a difficult thing to describe, because I would have thought if you don't like something, you don't like something. It's like if you don't like curry, you're not going to suddenly find in a month's time that suddenly you do like curry. But it's something that's clicked in, and it's almost like I'm beginning to understand what he was trying to say, and appreciate what he's trying to say, and really enjoy it in a very nourishing way. That might sound strange as well, but when I look at a piece of art or a painting that I love, it just feels wholesome and good. That's probably not the most eloquent way of putting it, but it's it's an unusual sensation for me to look at work that I didn't used to like and then understand what everyone's going on about. It's all part of the growing side of it.
Do you share your ideas before with anybody else?
I don't have anyone to share ideas. I find it very. I'm sure lots of photographers you've spoken to. I find it very isolated, and that's one of the things I like about living where we live, is that I am isolated, and I think a lot of them don't. You were talking, as we were talking before, you were talking about getting photographers together and talking about things. I just personally, I find it difficult to share. It's strange, isn't it? I want my ideas to come from me, and I'm pretty certain that if I sat in a pub and talked about ideas and things, then I would find things bleeding in from other directions that I wouldn't quite understand, or they wouldn't be my ideas, and I wouldn't have the right to own them properly. There'll be someone else who's thought them through and come to those decisions, whereas I want to be able to come to my own decisions through a process of thinking those things through.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it does make absolute sense, yes.
But it's kind of like, that's why I love interviews and things, is because I can actually talk to people about my work. And one of the reasons I made those little films is because it's something that I can almost feel like I'm telling people about how I work, but I can still keep a little bit of a distance.
Jumping back, it was something you said earlier about your archive and the way you'd like to have a timeline of your archive and be able to. Have you ever thought about making a film of your archive?
I had actually, about a month ago, I started going through in Lightroom and looking at all the photographs, and I was thinking what I could do is I could download all of these and stretch them out, but it would be quite a long one, and also my computer crashed halfway because it didn't have enough memory to download all these things. So I think, the thing is, when it comes to books and all sorts, everything is still growing, everything's still moving, and I would.
Yeah, because you haven't made a book, have you?
No. And
published.
I would, at the moment, I would rather make a book of my notes of what I do. Of my thoughts and things, because I write quite a lot down just to make it concrete in my head and make sure that I'm not going totally mad. If I could think of something, I'll get it down on the iPad. I'd rather have a little notebook of all those sort of ideas that I've had on Poppit, rather than a book showing my photographs at the moment, because it's still moving and it's still growing. And I'll think, if I made that book, then the following week I've got images that I've just created that I'd like to put into that book. So it's I think if I was doing everything in a solid project and that's that and that's that, then that would be a bit different. Plus it's difficult finding anyone to publish it, because it's Poppit's very very specific. Location, and I've had lots of people come back and say, we like the work, but it's only of a single location, and people aren't going to be interested in buying that. So what can you do? You're Hasselblad. You've been chosen as one of a
a group of finalists and all that sort of stuff with Hasselblad competitions.
Oh, the Hasselblad Masters, yeah.
Masters.
3 times, 3 years in a row.
And you go...
Yeah, each year. It was 3 years ago. Yeah, no, it was back in 2012,
was it, or something like that?
8, 9 and 10,
or 8,
9 and 12, something like that. And yeah, I got in 3 times in a row, and I lost to I think it was Hans Strand, I think, one of them, and but I mean, it's one of those things. And I thought by the third one, right, I'm not going to enter this anymore.
So, what does the future hold?
A lot. I mean, there's an awful lot of work happening, and it's still creating. I'm so excited about the Luminograms. It's like it's a whole new chapter opening up, something that's so exciting for me that I'm trying to get that work out and get it seen by as many people as possible. Mm-hmm. But the Poppit stuff, I haven't been to Poppit for a while because working on the Luminograms, it actually satisfies whatever the need that I have.
Yes. And
because I base it so much on Poppit work, it's almost like I am working on Poppit, but I don't actually have to be on Poppit. Right. And the Charles Landscape, that I'll come back to that. Yeah. And I expect that the Luminogram stuff that I'm working on now, that will change the way it kind of feed back on the Poppit and the Charles Landscape stuff, and it'll probably change it.
Okay.
But yeah, there's an awful lot that's still to happen.
How do you get your work out there? Do you have an agent? Do you? I mean, you've shown in galleries.
Yeah.
Los Angeles, New York.
Yeah.
Japan.
Yeah.
So do you have an agent or somebody who looks after you?
No. I've got I'm with the Ffoton gallery in Santa Fe, and so they sort of deal with my Charles Landscapey stuff. The Poppit Sands, I've been in with Poppit Sands in sort of numerous galleries, but I'm sort of it's more of social media. I find is the thing that sells it, and where I get most sales from is through people seeing it through social media. And there seems to be a serious lack of galleries in this country, not in Wales, in the UK.
Yeah,
it is, and it's so much better in America. There's so much more going on in America. Photography is looked in such a different way.
Yeah.
If you look at all the grants and the ideas and the competitions and the open spaces and that are available, I just wish that we would have that. I just wish that we would respect photography in this country quite the same way that they do over there.
Yes, I mean, you've recently shown in St. David's. Was sort of reaction good from St. David's people?
Brilliant. Yeah, I got onto the BBC and bits and pieces like that.
Yeah,
and they liked it. Especially the one that said you can't dance or something in their comments, but I'll find out who that is. But the reaction was good. I'm so glad that I managed to show it in Wales, because I haven't been able to show it anywhere else in Wales.
That is a great shame, actually.
It is, and I think there's so many photographers in Wales, but there doesn't seem to be, I might be ignorant on this subject, but there doesn't seem to be a core, solid, like a single photo gallery or a gallery that has a big prestige, that is government backed or something that's got the funding. I know there are smaller galleries that do a great job showing things, but I think it needs something in Cardiff somewhere that is the photographer's gallery. It needs someone like photography needs a hero, I think. Someone who does it out of passion, but also can invest their time. Because I find a lot of photographers, me included, are so inward with what they're doing, as they just don't have the time to, or they're not prepared to sacrifice the time that they could be creating with the time of curating. Something like Alistair Cook, I mean, what he did at getting people together and producing that. I think that's what would be great if there was someone in Cardiff and there was a location that there was a respected venue, and people could show their work and sell their work for not £50, but a proper amount same that paintings get.
Yes.
It needs that
elevation.
It does. and whether I'm sure it would just take one person who has the real passion, who does it full time, who could contact people and bring people to get their work in the gallery, and then it's the general public's opinion. I think people don't value maybe photography as much as they do paintings.
Yeah, that's an interesting area, really, isn't it? Because I mean, this is photography art, is art photography. Do you know what I mean? It's an endless argument that will go on ad infinitum, I guess. What do you regard yourself as? Do you regard yourself as a photographer or an artist? What are you?
Oh, I used to think of myself as a photographer, but now I started doing the Luminograms. I don't use a camera,
no,
and I don't use lens, or I don't use film, so I find it a bit difficult to equate that with being a photographer. Even though I use darkroom equipment, it's difficult. You could call yourself a visual artist or something like that. But there's the thing, if you start calling yourself an artist, people start thinking you're a bit of a ponce, and it's that you're highfalutin because you're an artist. But it's the truth, and I don't think people should be afraid of calling themselves what they really feel that they are. Because photography, I think, is, for a lot of people, can be a very exciting medium to use to get their artistic ideas out, but they also should be prepared to try finding other mediums that they can blend maybe with photography, or try other things. And I think it's great when you see photographers doing woodcuts and all sorts of funny things, because at the end of the day, if they spend a lot of time doing those things, I'm sure it will make them look at doing their photography in a slightly different way.
Yeah.
So I think there's too much of a distinction between art and photography, and I think if artists regarded themselves as if photographers regarded themselves as artists more, then I think it should all be sort of meshed together.
Yes.
And there should be galleries that show photography and paintings.
Yes.
And there shouldn't be just plain photography galleries. There should be, because you get sculpture along with paintings, and other types of art along with paintings. So it should be in that level. So it's sort of educating people to be prepared to value photography enough, and then be prepared to pay for photography enough, so that the galleries will become interested in buying or selling photography, because they know they can make money out of it, and it suddenly starts rising in sort of everyone's interest and in standing.
Yeah,
I think.
Okay.
But it's the whole of the UK is just not. It's London is fantastic. They sell sort of prints for loads of money, because there are people there that collect them and whatnot. But I can't think of anywhere else. I mean, once again, I might be ignorant on this, but there are probably other dotted around the UK. But if you do a gallery search in the States of photography galleries, or galleries that sell both photography and paintings, thousands of them. Each place has got dozens and dozens of well-respected galleries that sell photographs for $1,000 or something like that, and and people are prepared to expend it because they see a photograph as part of their culture, and they love it.
Yeah, it's part of the culture, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
Film, celluloid is part of their culture. They're really good at it.
Yeah, all the way back to the American Civil War, they've got a real root, and they really appreciate it.
Yeah,
and they love it, and that just doesn't seem to be in the UK. They don't seem to have that, and whether it's possible to get people to really appreciate photography, or maybe it is. Maybe it's getting better. It certainly seems to be doing well in London, but it needs to spread out. You need to have somewhere in Cardiff or anywhere, big cities that have a dedicated gallery,
and of course the money to buy the people with the money in order to buy the photographs.
Absolutely, that's the real key. And they also got to think it's worth the money, whether they're buying it because they love it, or whether they're buying it as some kind of investment. Yes. So I think people have to take maybe a few chances with their money and be prepared to buy, splash out a bit of extra cash on a photograph. But that's all what galleries do. It's galleries, when they talk to people buying photographs, they can explain that it is a wonderful investment. It's the gallery's job to educate people and let them know that what they're getting is worth the amount of money that they're spending.
Of course, yes.
So, you know, you need a real passionate gallery owners, which they've got in America all over the place. And there are in London. But not so many anywhere else, I think. But there, like I said, there could be ones that are dotted around the UK that I haven't heard of.
Yeah, and it goes back to this business as well. I mean, you enjoy printing your work. You think, you know, that's...
I don't know if it's a strain.
It's a strain.
Yeah.
Well, hard work.
Yeah.
But it's an end point for you. And for lots of people who work in photography business, if you like, we don't print enough stuff. I mean, certainly I don't print, you know, and I would be... although... It was really funny. I got some portraits I'd done printed by, and they were done, platinum prints were done of them. And they went back to an actual negative and were printed from a negative to make the... So that, by a very fine young printer. And I found when I actually handled that bit of paper... that it was a culmination. You're right in saying it, and maybe we should be printing more stuff, because most people keep their photographs on hard drives and they live eternally on hard drives, they hope. So, I mean, in a way, your material will live for a very, very long time. Mine could die tomorrow.
I'd hope so. But I hadn't really considered that, to be honest. I mean, you've got to get the photograph out to printed to have it on the wall, and
yes.
I personally think that the photograph needs to be on a wall rather than
on a hard drive.
On a hard drive, or even in a book. I know everyone loves photo books, but I find some of them. I've had got quite a few, but I never look at them anymore. I found I don't know why. Plenty of people love them, and that's fantastic. But
they
for
lose
me,
something, don't they?
Yeah, there's something that I would rather have a book about a photographer that has got maybe 2 or 3 of his photographs in, and the rest is telling me all about him or her and how they work and their passions and what's happened in their life and how they live their life. That's what really fascinates me, rather than looking at their work. And I'd like to look at their work, but not in a book form.
Have you ever dabbled with any other processes?
No.
Okay.
I haven't tried platinum printing.
Right.
It's all to do with why would I? If I figured something out in my mind that I thought platinum printing would really make this look great,
right,
then I would do it.
Okay.
Like the Charles landscape pictures.
Yeah.
There was a point where I thought platinum printing, they'd look really good. But then I started printing them on inkjet, and I know a lot of people dislike inkjets, but I find that they're just another way of getting a result. And also, I mean, I think people dislike them because they're new and modern and whatever, but I just think in like 30 years' time, they're not going to be any left. There'll be another process, and suddenly inkjet printing will be very sort of obscure. No one will be printing them because they won't be making any parts to for these machines, and they'll all be knackered. And so I kind of think inkjet printing is just as valid for if it gives you the results that you want.
Okay.
I think anything is valid as long as it gives you the results you want. So you could shoot through you could hollow out a melon and make a camera out of that. That would be just as valid for me, as long as whoever's doing it thinks it's. So I may, if I can find or I come across in my thinking something that platinum printing would bring to it that is new, that I hadn't seen anyone else do before, then definitely I would sort of go into that way of printing, or any other process really. It doesn't, anything is open. It's all up for grabs, as long as it gets the result you want. Then I think that's the important thing.
When did you first show? What was your first show, and how did you go about the show in a gallery?
Well, that was in Cardigan, and that was the first gallery I'd gotten into, because I had, I dived headfirst into this landscape photographer thing. I thought, I'll become a landscape photographer. And like I said before, I visited all the local places. And within a month, I went to this gallery in Cardigan, and they said, "Yeah, we'll take your work." And I thought, "Oh, this is easy. You just need to get into a gallery, no problem at all." And then within a year, I'd been photographing Poppit for a year. I went to the prints were selling, and so I went to the gallery owner, and he was enthusiastic. He said, "Yeah, why don't we have an exhibition of just Poppit work?" So brilliant. And at that point, I was printing all my prints big and through an inkjet printer. There's no silver gelatin at all. At that point, I hadn't even considered printing them in any other way. So I said, that was great, and we organised it and got it. I must have printed about 30 of these things. I went big style into it, and great big frames, and we lined up the whole place, and everyone came around and had a meal, and everyone this, that, and the other. And I think I sold one print. So it put me badly into debt, and it taught me a lesson about being a little bit more cautious about doing solo shows anyway, because you have to invest a lot of money in the framing if you get someone to do it for you. And I think there was this expectation of success right away, and I think there is a expectation of people, and I certainly had it when I started, was that you get into a magazine, you think, people are going to see this, brilliant, I've done it. Or you get into a gallery and you think, oh, I'm in a gallery, fantastic. But it isn't that like that. It's got lots and lots of good things that happen, and then bad things that happen. It's not. I can't think of anyone who's had a smooth sort of journey all the way to where they are. And galleries, they're good, and I think a lot of people want to get into them because they do give you a certain amount of prestige, which I think people want. They love the idea of, and maybe they need for their own self-esteem, possibly. It certainly helped me to get into a gallery, because there's someone basically standing there saying, we like your work so much that we're prepared to invest time and effort into selling it because we think it's going to sell and we're going to make money and you're going to make money.
Yeah, so did you have to hawk your work to different galleries, or did you choose specific galleries that you wanted to show?
I went to that gallery in Cardigan once, and they looked at my work and said, yeah, okay. Yeah, we'll have it.
But what about more prestigious galleries, for example, in London?
No, what happened is I won a competition that they were running, and they said, yeah, we'll take you for that.
Yes, I know.
Yeah. So it was... it's a kind of a different type of thing. But that time I spent in London was such an eye-opener, because how things work in London and the difference in money that's available in London and the way they do things, it really makes you realise what it's all about. And I personally don't think I was ready to be at that state there. And the art market, I've read a blog some time ago, and someone was describing the art market, and he was saying it was like this great glass dome, and inside the glass dome you've got gallery owners and people who are already with the gallery, and collectors and museum curators, whatever. They're all in there having a great time with champagne and laughing a lot, and then outside is all of the photographers and artists peering in. And they're all tapping away at the glass, trying to get in, because it's the one thing. They see these people having this great time, successful, money, happy, and they're all banging on the glass trying to get in. And they can't get in because they're just being ignored, unless they do something really stupid or really strange outside, and then it catches someone's eye, and they think, oh, okay, who's that? And then eventually... if you bang loud enough, or you do something so outrageous outside that you have get their attention, they'll look at you, and then they'll recognise you, and then the glass dome opens up, and then they'll bring you in. And as soon as you're in, you get a glass of champagne, and everything's great, and you're laughing. But it seems that way. But when you actually are in the glass dome, yes, it isn't that way. It's that you feel stressed on the outside when you're looking in, because you can see all these opportunities that other people are getting, and you think, these people are having a fantastic time. Why aren't I? But when you're inside, which I have been, the pressure, it's like a pressure cooker, and it is different, and it's networking it's not networking in a nice way. It's networking in a hard way.
Yes.
And it's people may look like success, and you think it's easy for them now. They're there, and it's really successful. But what is actually happening is they're piled under a load of pressure. The success that they're getting is never as much as it seems.
Yeah.
No matter how successful they seem, and the amount of money they're getting is never as much as it seems.
Yeah.
And it's like an impression of what people get from the outside, and that impression that they give off kind of is needed to feed what they're doing, so people think they're more successful, so people buy their work, and people are happy, and it's kind of like it is a bit.
I can equate with that totally, because I used to work in television, and it's exactly the same in the television industry. You have the glass dome, and you're all peering inside it, and you want to get inside, and when you get inside, it becomes
it's another world.
And because people don't actually people appear nice, and they appear, but they're always peering over your shoulder, and they're always peeping to see who else they can let into the glass dome and maybe get rid of you. So all those things I can really understand. There's a really, really good metaphor for it all.
But also, it would seem to get yourself into up to a certain stage in your career to be able to sell work, which is for a reasonable amount of money, not like a £50 print, something like that. You have to partake in that. You can't. I don't know anyone who sells their work, who's on the outside, who sells their work for a good amount of money, who's on the outside of the dome. They have to have some kind of. They've either been in there, or they've done something, or they've played the game. And also, I think that...
Are you a good game player?
No, I'm awful. I'm absolutely awful. But it's... I think that it's not necessarily the same in America. I think in America, I might be being naive, and there might be American photographers that would say so, but it would seem a warmer place, and more accepting place, maybe.
Okay.
And also, I don't know whether it needs to. I sometimes think, do galleries have to be that way? Because they're not there to make people happy. They're there to make money and to progress people's career and make people happy. And are they a necessary line in filtering out all the rubbish? Because they are only going to take on what they think they can sell. So they're not going to take on someone who has a load of can talk the talk without any substance. They've got to be able to sell their work. So I'm wondering, are galleries right? Are they, even though it's incredibly difficult to get into a gallery, is that a good thing? I think I'm beginning to think that it is a good thing, because there are so many artists and photographers that can talk about their work, and can, just really lay it down thick. But the work isn't particularly fantastic, so it's like
it's smoke and mirrors, basically.
Yeah, it can be, I think. And I think maybe it's not the case of all galleries, but I think galleries maybe play a pretty important part of filtering out the rubbish. It's just, if we had more of them, and I think I think the key would be, if we had more galleries, then there'll be more people being accepted. And,
marketing work and selling work. Obviously, the web and social media is crucial, I guess. How crucial is it for you, and to create income, I guess?
When I started, I felt very strongly that you had to have a gallery. You had to get a gallery, and they would progress your career. And I think if you wanted to get to a certain level, galleries are, they are essential, no matter how difficult it is, and how people say they can sell their work online and get a good price for it. I think the prestige that a gallery gives you, and the fact that they have the contacts to the right people, and they can explain things to these people. I think if you want to get to a certain level, you have to have a gallery behind you, no matter how difficult it is. But I think the selling online, but for me, it's been very important. I didn't used to like or want to sell anything online because I kind of thought it was giving up. You kind of feel that if you start doing that, you put yourself in a great big melting pot of every Tom, Dick and Harry that's selling their prints for £50, which you don't really want to do, because a lot of selling your work or having a status is how people see you on the outside world. And you have to show that you're serious. You're not messing around with this. You're not just doing it at the weekends. You're sacrificing things, not just for yourself, but for your family. I mean, you're not having a big enough income to go on lovely holidays and things. It's not just you that's giving things up. It's everybody else that is in your life. So you have to kind of not portray yourself as an amateur, just doing it for the weekends and getting them printed off. But I found online, especially things like Facebook, because when you do posts on Facebook, you can actually write, and I do this quite a lot, is write things down, how you're thinking, your process, what you're doing. It's not just a selling of a product. You become part of someone's outside people's lives. You describe how you're doing it and what's doing it, and your passion comes through, hopefully. And people, you post a picture up. And I've had people on Twitter as well. I've posted a picture up, and within minutes, someone's contacted me and said, "Yeah, I want that. I'll have that." And that kind of money coming in helps, especially when you've got a process like Luminograms that I'm just wasting tons and tons of paper, because it's such a sort of experimental process.
Of course, yes. And
I'm still sort of like, I've only been doing it for a year, so I'm still making mistakes as I go along and developing it. I just get through tons and tons of paper. So selling online was something that I thought was a backward step if you wanted to be in a gallery. But I'm beginning to feel that as long as it's sold without the crap that you can, the self-promoting crap, if you do it in with a bit of humility and a bit of honesty and truth, then people will accept that and understand that they're buying a piece of your life. They're not just buying something you've whacked out over the weekend. So it's got to go. I cannot stick websites and people that oversell themselves. I find it really difficult to stomach. Yes. And I find it, I'm quite an easygoing bloke, and I don't really dislike people, but I find it really grates with me when someone classes themselves as like the UK's greatest landscape photographer or something, when it's so obvious that they're not. And it's not the same, not just photographers, it's painters as well. When I see that they class themselves as the greatest so and so. So yeah, I think online sales is if you're doing it honestly and truthfully, and you can do it alongside your sort of moving towards trying to find a gallery. And I think galleries also, if they look at your site and they see that you're selling work in an honest way, they'll see that you're actually producing work that people are interested in. So that's not a bad thing at all, I don't think.
Cool. Does a sketchbook play a part in your everyday camera bag?
No. It does. It used to when I do the child's landscape ones. It became very important, because when you're sort of creating something out of that you want to look like reality, you have to follow rules that are based on reality. And I spent quite a long time going up and sketching rock faces and whatever, solely so you get the horizon in the right place and bits and pieces, because if you get that wrong, then it's never going to look right. And the cliffs around the Pembrokeshire coast are incredible and inspiring. So and I like drawing as well, and I like sketching, and I like the fact that it forces you to look and look again and look again and look harder again, and that's the kind of like a process that I like to do when I do my photography.
I suppose, from my point of view, as a viewer of your work, I, I don't need an explanation to your work, and you don't explain your work. You just say, "Pop it." Is that a conscious choice? Have you thought about naming your photographs or giving them?
No, I always found. Well, I was talking to a gallery owner about this, and the names just came out, and they sounded so cheesy, and they're just awful. And I'd never even considered it. I think that when you look at a picture, you've got to kind of see the image, and it's almost as if, for my Poppit work anyway, it's almost as if whoever's taking the photograph is standing next to you and is pointing out the reasons why you took that photograph. And for me personally, I find with an image there's certain points of interest that I could point at and say, for me, the reason I took that photograph was this line here, that line there, the way those two textures match. And it's I would like it to be that if someone looked at the Poppit Sands image, they would be able to look at that image and see, as if I was talking to them and telling them those are the reasons. And I think if someone can, and I find when I look at someone's work and I see, and I enjoy looking at it, and I can see particular points that I find exciting that all mesh together to make a lovely solid composition, I find I have a connection with that person. It's almost like you're thinking in the same way. You have some kind of mind, even though they might be dead. You feel like you're thinking in the same way that they were thinking. So you have a connection with them. You understand why they did what they did. And I think as soon as you get that connection, then you warm to the piece much more. Yes. I would have thought it to have one of my images and then have a bit of writing about why, what it is about, and I would first of all find that quite difficult to write down, and secondly, I wouldn't think you'd really need it.
Yeah, because what I see, I mean, some of your images are like sinews of the earth, really. It's like a dissection of the body of the earth.
Yeah.
And that's what it gives to me.
Yeah.
And I find that intriguing. And so I don't need that context or an explanation. No. They are what they are.
Yeah, that's right.
Beautiful things.
Yeah, and it's interesting you should say about it being like the earth, like a body. I find sometimes that it can look like a body there, but it's
which is alive almost. It's like you're a surgeon and you've taken it and you've peeled back.
Yeah,
visceral. Yeah.
Well, it's very much like walking on the beach. I think I've said this before. It's like being on a massive Jackson Pollock painting, and you're holding an empty picture frame, and you're walking around trying to frame these tiny little snippets of composition and lines together. And it can be very much like I think I can condense it down to lines and circles. It's all down to lines and circles, and everything. If you forget about the detail, if you get the lines and circles and the composition right in that frame that you're holding, then if it's got extra detail, then brilliant. Yeah, and then if everything else happens, then fantastic.
Yeah.
But it's the getting those points right. But I don't really think about it when I'm taking it. It just kind of clicks and you see it. And it's a very quick thing. You set the tripod up, look, click, and then I never take a second shot of the same thing. It's always just one that's done right. I'll go somewhere else. So I would much rather explain the images in either an interview form or in writing form than explain each individual one. I'd never even considered that. It's strange. It doesn't seem to come into my way of thinking for some reason. Obviously it does for lots of other people, but not for me.
Interesting. Just one more question for you. How do your kids react to your photographs of islands?
They're not interested at all. They're much more interested in the Poppit pictures.
Right.
They love the St David's exhibition. They like those very much. But the child's landscape ones, they're not. No, they're not. I think because with the child's mind, they think it up all themselves in their head. It's kind of like a child's landscape is for adults to think
I've forgotten
to think like
yeah.
to children, whereas the kids, their imagination is on fire all the time, and they met this stuff up anyway. Out of absolutely everything in the house, it's sort of like something new or can be changed or can be warped in some way that to suit their excited enthusiasm about everything.
Fantastic. Well, more power to your elbow, Mike. I hope I look forward to seeing more experimental work from you.
You most definitely will. Yeah.
Cool.